Well, we're finally here. Chapters 3 and 4 are out. It's still kinda surreal, and I have so many thoughts. Today, I wanted to share some of the thoughts I had regarding the two chapters, especially the lore stuff. Now, if you're here and have not played chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune, what are you doing here? Leave. This is your first and only warning. I will not be holding back in this video. Everything from either chapter is fair game. With that said, let's get on with the video. Okay, starting off with chapter 3. Chapter 3 was a very fun chapter. Not too important to the main overarching story, but very fun. I like the 8-bit sections throughout the chapter, and Tenna was absolutely hysterical. I loved that character so much throughout the entire chapter, so I was a little devastated when he was, well, sliced into pieces. Overall, I didn't have too many complaints regarding chapter 3. There was only really one thing I disliked regarding chapter 3, and that was how the optional secret boss content was handled. If you're unaware, in chapter 3, there are hidden minigames in the S-rank room that you're able to access by getting an S-rank in one of the boards. These minigames are very interesting in that they seem to be a retelling of the chapter 2 weird route. And this retelling occurs regardless of whether or not you actually went through with the weird route in chapter 2. That aside, these minigames are the original unaltered version of the boards that we see in the main story. Each of these games involve us controlling an 8-bit version of Kris similar to the main boards. The main difference being, though, is that we're able to find a sword that allows us to kill enemies and level up. After killing enough enemies in each board, you can begin to destroy objects blocking your path. The first board, not much of note happens, aside from getting a key after killing a blue bird. Familiar, huh? Second board, we have a very similar setup, except this time, we're able to make use of the key that we got in the first board. This key can be used on a door that's found in an area of the board that Tenna usually restricts us from accessing. Here, we find a dungeon of sorts, and what we find inside is very interesting. Aside from more enemies, we're able to find text stating, "Follow the white cloak," and that the forbidden path began with ice magic. Interesting. If you're familiar with the chapter 2 weird route, this should be familiar. The white cloak is very clearly referencing Noelle's Dark World outfit, and the text stating the forbidden path began with ice magic is very clearly referencing Noelle's ice magic. The ice magic that we have to make use of to go down a weird route. Or, in other words, the forbidden path. Speaking of white cloak, after we kill enough enemies, we find a character in a white cloak that can use ice magic. That ice magic we end up using on a blue bird-looking enemy. This is very clearly alluding to the weird route in chapter 2, and again, this content occurs regardless if you went down a weird route. In any case, this segment ends with both the ice key and white cloaked sprite being used up right before we interact with someone. As to who or what, I'm not sure, but someone. We then walk forward to obtain the shelter key, as Kris is then thanked for their hard work before getting used up. It should be noted that what we interact with to get the shelter key looks sorta like a save point, at least to me. Anyways, moving forward. The third and final segment of the side content takes place on the unused board 3 that we never actually see in the main story. This time, we're not alone, and are actually joined by Susie and Rouse NPCs. No enemies in sight to level up, though. That is, except for our party members. To level up this time, we need to kill Susie and Rouse in this minigame. It should be noted that Kris looks away as we do this. We then are able to find a manhole and enter the final dungeon where you have to slay a multitude of enemies before you finally reach the secret boss. This boss is very different from anything we saw in chapter 1 and 2. It involves us needing to strike down whatever this thing is. Whatever it is, it kinda looks like it might be the Shadow Mantle itself to me, which apparently we saw all the way back in chapter 1, as on the Undertale 6th anniversary livestream, as Toby says the following when King's cape flies away.
Cool mantle, bro.
So maybe we're fighting the Shadow Mantle, or something wearing it. I'm not sure. In any case, whatever this thing is most likely called Eram, if we go off the name of the song that plays before this fight, that is. Upon defeating this boss, we get some interesting dialogue though. There, that's what I wanted to see. Flickering red, like pretty little flames. Your eyes can't hide it, Kris. Without play, the knife grows dull. Haha, well, enough of that. We both have work to do. So if you want this mantle, hurry up and take it, if you can reach it. After that exchange, we are faced with a chest that we can't reach. So instead, we move the 8-bit Kris we control off the screen. And Kris themselves looks rather surprised by this, dropping their controller as we approach, before our 8-bit Kris quickly runs off the screen. We quickly then regain control of the real Kris, where we're able to walk onto the screen and obtain the Shadow Mantle. A lot to digest there, especially the fact that the weird route is referenced regardless of if one ever actually occurred. Anyways, don't get me wrong about the side content. I thought all of it was very cool. My issue though was how you could very easily be locked out of it. To explain, for me personally, round 1 I got an A rank. This completely locked me out of the S rank room, thus preventing me from ever getting the Shadow Mantle and all that side content. I wasn't really too fond of this. To explain, if you don't do the first S rank room game after the first board, you're completely locked out of the side content, as you won't have the ice key to progress. To do any of this side content, you would have to completely restart the chapter. Again, I didn't love this, but ultimately this is one minor issue in the entire chapter. Putting all of that aside though, we should talk about the elephant in the room, the final boss of chapter 3. None other than the Roaring Knight. This was a shock. I did not expect to see the knight in chapter 3, let alone fight them. This fight is extremely difficult, and at first, I thought it was pretty much a scripted loss. However, that's not entirely the case. Remember that Shadow Mantle you could get earlier in the chapter? What is it actually used for? Well, ERAM's not really the secret boss. Instead, that would be the knight. You heard me correctly. The proper secret boss of chapter 3 is the knight. The Shadow Mantle, when equipped, decreases the amount of damage we take from the knight's attacks. Upon defeating the knight, they still grab Undyne and fly her into the bunker, but they also drop a Shadow Crystal, an item usually reserved for secret bosses. This fight is tough, but not impossible, and actually beatable regardless of if you have the Shadow Mantle or not. While we may not have a true secret boss, I think this is just as cool, a hidden outcome to a fight that otherwise seems impossible. There is another thing I should mention regarding the knight though. Look at them. Antlers, and look at their sword. It looks sorta like a bat. To me, I have a very strong feeling that the knight is December Holiday. If you're not aware, Noelle mentions that in the past, Des would smack Kris with a wiffle bat. Not only that, in Noelle's room, on her computer, you're able to see a picture of Des holding a cracked baseball bat. Take a look at the knight's sword again. It looks like there's a crack in it. Is this the same baseball bat? I feel like it would be. In any case, I think it's obvious Kris knows who the knight is. Not only do they do the least damage to the knight out of anyone in the party, strangely, when you've taken no damage in the knight fight, Kris coughs the knight, and the fight ends not long after. This, to me, feels like Kris is signaling the knight to end the fight. Not only this, there are things in Chapter 4 that also point to Kris seemingly either knowing or working with the knight. Whatever the case, Des being the knight would be an obvious option to me. As well, she is missing after all, and I feel like it makes sense if she went missing in a dark world. In any case, if this is Des, I do question whether or not she's a normal Lightner at this point. I mean, we can see her ribcage. Did she die in a dark world? Or is she in some kind of weird state? I don't think she's dead because, well, the knight would have had to carry Undyne into the light world to get to the bunker. Or perhaps they have some kind of ability to go to different dark worlds without entering the light world. I don't think this is the case because most of the time the knight is described as someone who would open dark fountains. There's a lot to discuss here, much of which I will probably go into in a future video. In any case, I'd love to hear what you all think in the comments section down below. And if you're enjoying this video in any capacity and you would like to see more in the future, be sure to consider subscribing. It'd go a long way in supporting the channel. Anyways, that aside, there was one more thing I wanted to touch on regarding Chapter 3, and that was... Okay, moving on to Chapter 4. Wow, and I mean wow. What a chapter. This chapter was insane. I wasn't sure what to expect from Chapter 4, but I certainly didn't think this much story would be dropped on us. I love this chapter a lot. The story, the music, the locations we visited, all of it was fantastic. Going inside the holiday household was really cool. And that whole segment with Kris shoving us inside a box and having to maneuver around the holiday household as the soul, all very cool stuff. I honestly really had no complaints regarding this chapter. While I don't have any complaints, There is a lot to talk about with this chapter. Firstly, we got a good amount of Kris content in this chapter. I mean the real Kris, not us just controlling them. We find out that Kris is seemingly working for someone we can assume is Carol Holiday. I mean, Kris does call someone after Susie gets the guitar, and who shows up? None other than Carol Holiday. In any case, the initial phone conversation we overheard Kris having is interesting in general. It is fragmented, but there is some interesting stuff in there, especially regarding the police and a sacrifice. I'm really hoping Undyne isn't about to be sacrificed for whatever Carol has in mind. As well, the phone conversation reveals that the Dark Fountain that's eventually opened in the church was a planned out thing, and that Kris was very much aware of this plan. How much does Kris know exactly? Well, probably a good bit. I think we can safely assume that Carol, Kris, and the Knight are all working together. Carol is most likely the one Kris calls, and if the church Dark Fountain was planned to be opened, the only real option we have for who opened the church fountain is the Knight. And as I previously mentioned, Kris most likely knows who the Knight is, or is at least working with them. To me, it's fairly obvious that Kris is going along with what the Knight is doing. Moving on now. The Church Dark World. There's so much interesting stuff there, I don't even know where to begin. Firstly, we saw a lot more of the prophecy than we have ever before. There is a good amount of information to digest. For instance, in the chapter, there's a depiction of the angel. One, of course, that we, the player, cannot see, but Susie, Kris, and Rousey can. To me, this chapter especially has made me think more and more that the player is the angel. Player angel would make a lot of sense, especially considering how Susie reacts to this depiction. While we cannot see it, she can, and her reaction to it comes off as this being a pretty strange image. And what would be stranger than depicting some abstract entity like the player? Also, the soul we control gets covered by an angel doll, so I mean, like, come on now. And while we're on the topic of prophecy, there's actually something interesting to the left of this angel depiction, and that is ASGORE. You heard me right. ASGORE is depicted in the prophecy. Aside from the image being very clearly him, the description, the flower man trapped in an asylum, can't really be applied to any other character that we know of. So this points pretty clearly to where Chapter 5's Dark World will be. Flower King. This one prophecy depiction isn't the only thing pointing to this, however. What else points to it, you may ask? For the answer to that, we must first discuss the Chapter 4 secret boss. None other than Gerson Boom. This may be my favorite secret boss fight yet. But first, let's just talk about Gerson appearing to begin with. So Gerson's a Lightner, with an asterisk. The interesting thing about Gerson is that in the light world, he is very much dead. You can actually even find his grave. So how is he here even? Well, as it turns out, if a monster's dust is spread onto an object, they can in fact come back to life in a dark world. This is something many, including myself, have theorized for a while now. So to see this be true was pretty cool. I've mentioned this idea in past videos myself. More specifically, I have a theory that Rudy will end up dead, and he'll end up being revived in a dark world at some point. Be it by the Knight, Noelle, whoever at this point. Anyways, back to Gerson. Throughout the chapter, we see Gerson trying to mentor Susie, with it ultimately culminating in the secret boss fight. Firstly, this fight's so cool. We see the return of the green soul mode, which was very fun to have return. But I didn't just like this fight mechanically, but thematically too. Gerson throughout the fight narrates about Lord of the Hammer, a book series Gerson wrote while he was still alive. This book series is based on the prophecy, with his narrations of each chapter mirroring what's going on in Deltarune. Oh, and take a look at Chapter 5's description, by the way. Chapter 5, the field of pink and gold. The vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy. Yeah, Chapter 5 is definitely in Flower King. Anyways, back to the secret boss fight. It's clear from this fight that Gerson does not support the prophecy. And this is something he's trying to instill in Susie. He's trying to get her to understand that while fate is approaching, while the prophecy is approaching, she, with her hope, can change things. This is so interesting. An idea I've had for a while, and I've discussed in previous videos even, is that one of the messages of this game will likely be that your choices, no matter how big or small, matter. Even when things seem impossible, when things seem immutable, our choices still matter, no matter how big or small. And this fight supports that idea in my head. Of any character, Susie would definitely be the one to spit in the face of the prophecy and be able to change things. Speaking of spitting in the face of the prophecy, how about the ending of it? Towards the end of the chapter, we find the end of the prophecy. Well, at least Susie does. We never see it, but her reaction to it is to punch and destroy it. I'm sure this will be an indicator of things to come. As to what the ending of the prophecy is, I have a feeling that someone will die. Be it Rousey being gone forever, Kris dying, or even Susie, someone's gonna die. What else would warrant such a reaction from Susie? To punch so hard that she makes herself bleed. Wait, now hold on just a minute. Bleed? So this chapter revealed that monsters still turn to dust, just like in Undertale. However, they can bleed. What does this mean? Why is this important? Well, there's a certain monster in Undertale that can bleed. Sans. An idea that's been popular for a while now is that Sans Undertale is Sans Deltarune, and this especially supports that. He's the only monster in Undertale to bleed. None of the others do. So him being from the Deltarune world would make a lot of sense. Not only that, remember in Undertale when you talk to Sans at the MTT resort, and the song It's Raining Somewhere Else starts playing? Yeah, at the end of this chapter, when we get out of the Dark World, the song that plays is The Place Where It Rained. I don't think I need to explain myself much here. This Sans in Deltarune is probably the same one as we see in Undertale, which is weird to say that it's now all but certain that this is the case. And let me just say, man, hearing this track made me feel something. I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but hearing this rendition of It's Raining Somewhere Else truly felt special. Alright, moving on. What kind of Undertale Deltarune video would it be if I didn't mention Gaster? We have seemingly 3 new interactions with him. First is when we beat Chapter 4. This is the one that pretty much everyone will see. This one is interesting. The thing to make note of here is that he says, my Deltarune. I've seen the idea floating around for a while now that Gaster is a sort of stand-in for a video game developer. And I can't help but agree, especially because of this one line. My Deltarune. Saying how much longer my Deltarune feels like it'd be something a game dev would say, so it makes sense to me. Alright, second interaction. This one is actually PlayStation exclusive. Unlike every other platform, the PlayStation version of the game has achievements. So that being said, if you manage to beat Chapter 4 without gaining any achievements, you'll get a new Gaster interaction at the end of Chapter 4, in which he refers to the player by name. Not Kris, but the player's name. That's really, really interesting. He also asks what we are, which I find really funny, and it is a very valid reaction given how difficult it would be not to gain any achievements. Alright, third and final interaction. This interaction occurs if we try to go back and fight the knight. He offers the player a helping hand in that he'll reset us back to the start of the fight if we wish to do so. What's notable here is that this is the second mention of determination other than Queen. Of course, it's the word determined, but I think this is definitely not a mistake, especially with how careful Toby has been to not make reference to determination. Seeing the word determined was a surprise. Notice how he said, your loss is all but guaranteed. I feel that this supports an idea that I brought up in a previous video, that determination is the power to change fate, that through our determination, we can alter fate in this game. This, in combination with the secret boss, makes me feel like I'm at least partially right about the ideas I brought up in these 2 previous videos. The too long didn't read of these 2 videos being that determination is the power to change fate, and that our choices, no matter how big or small, matter. With the knight fight, if I'm correct about determination being the power to change fate, allowing us to achieve a desired end through our sheer will and, well, determination, the knight fight would be a perfect example of this. This fight is usually one that is unwinnable, seemingly impossible. But if we have enough determination to power through and win against this fraud, we can change the outcome and obtain a Shadow Crystal. Man, what a ride this has been. These 2 chapters were fantastic. I feel that as of now, with what we have out, Chapter 4 is probably my favorite chapter now. It was just that good. Now, this video was only covering the surface of the thoughts I have about these 2 chapters. I still have more I could discuss. It could probably go on for hours. So definitely expect to see more content in the very near future. And with that, I just wanted to thank all of you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video in any capacity, I again encourage you to subscribe and leave a like down below. And feel free to comment any of your thoughts or feelings down in the comments section below. I'd love to hear what you all think. With that, video done. Bye-bye.